So Petzl is really in the business of providing fall protection, access equipment, and rescue equipment for many industries, including the wind energy sector.
Welcome to the UPTIME Wind Energy Podcast. I am your co-host, Alan Hall, and here from Canada, the queen of COVID, Dr. Rosemary Barnes. Welcome, Rosemary.
Thanks.
And yeah, thanks, you think, right?
It's not my favorite introduction, but accurate on this particular day.
We're always truthful on this show, very truthful. And from the largest wind energy state in America, Texas, Joel Saxman of Wind Power Lab. Welcome, Joel.
Thank you, sir. It's true.
We have a very busy week. We're all still recovering from ACP San Antonio. There was an outbreak of COVID, evidently, and everybody's still recovering. But we're back and better than ever. So let's get Rosemary's thoughts on this carbon removal technology that the U.S. government is throwing $3.5 billion at. And then we have a guest interview. We haven't had those in a while. So we're going to have Michel Goulet from Petzl, one of Rosemary's favorite helmet makers. And Michel is going to talk about all the different safety products that they have and what you need to do with your safety gear to check it out, make sure it's working properly, and how to dispose of it. This is a lot of good information there from Michel. And then after the interview with Michel, we'll talk about the D.O.E. 2022 Collegiate Wind Competition, which we all saw down in San Antonio, which is really, really cool. So how Rosemary kind of describes some of that carbon removal technologies. So Rosemary, this is in your sweet spot of the U.S. federal government is going to pour $3.5 billion into carbon capture. So the Department of Energy said it's going to support 4, what they quote, large-scale regional direct air capture hubs. And so where those are, we should find out because it doesn't really talk to that. That they hope to remove 1 million tons of carbon dioxide annually at each of these 4 hubs. So part of the two companies that get named quite often are Carbon Engineering and Climeworks. And I think we've talked about Climeworks, which are building direct air capture facilities. And Rosemary, you and I have talked about what those facilities do and what they try to do. If they're trying to remove 1 million tons of CO2 annually, the U.S. produces about 5,000 million metric tons of CO2. So it's like 4 out of 5,000. There's a big gap there. What are they going to learn with these 1 million ton CO2 removal systems?
Yeah, I mean, so I think I probably would have said this the last time that we talked about direct air capture or any kind of, carbon capture and storage. It's going to be an important technology, but it's never going to be, it's not something that you do instead of decarbonizing. And you can see that from the scale that you just mentioned. So, yeah, if they're capable of capturing 1 million tons of CO2 annually, which is absolutely huge compared to what anyone is currently doing. So don't underestimate the scale of, the size of the challenge that they've set themselves. I mean, if you look at, so this is a little bit similar to what Elon Musk's X Prize is trying to do, and they're spending $100 million getting projects that they're working, to win the grand prize, the teams have to first demonstrate a working solution of a scale of at least 1,000 tons per year. So we're not even up to 1,000 tons a year yet. And so the D.O.E. and the X Prize both are aiming for a technology that will eventually scale to 1 million tons per year at a reasonable cost. So yeah, we're not currently 1,000 tons a year is a huge challenge, and then they're eventually projecting to 1 million, which is more huge, and even that is like one
drop in the bucket, right?
5,000th of what the US is currently emitting. So you can kind of see from that this is not the solution to climate change. And I think you see so much disagreement, people yelling at each other even about carbon capture. Most people that are really serious about the energy transition and professionals working in this field, I feel most people get really annoyed and upset about the fact that people are focusing on carbon capture, and they'll say things like, it hasn't worked yet, it's very expensive, it's just a way for fossil fuel companies to keep on doing what they're doing, and that it can never be the solution to climate change. And I think all of that is true. However, we're never going to get to actual zero emissions. It's not really possible when you think about things like agriculture and some of the natural processes like permafrost thawing and other things like that, and even fertilizers. So far there isn't a really good solution to stopping all emissions from that. So for those last bits, the truly hard to abate stuff, not people call a lot of things hard to abate that really aren't, but there will be some things that technology is not just going to come along with a cheaper, better solution that has zero emissions for everything. And for those, that's the last little bit that we need the carbon capture for. So what we need is to be working on these technologies with a long lead time, because it's not easy. If we have got all the easy stuff done by 2040, hopefully, then we need the carbon capture working to take care of the really hard stuff. We can't just start then, because it's a hard problem. So I agree that we definitely need programs like this, give people a reason to continue working on it. However, we need to do so in a way that doesn't make people think that we don't need to do anything else, because it's never going to be a replacement for, swapping fossil fuel electricity generation with renewable electricity generation. It's always going to cost thousands of times probably more to, try and solve things in that way, not to mention the huge amount of energy that it takes to actually run the direct air capture. So, we somehow need to be working very hard on it, but not get ahead of ourselves with what it's going to do. And I think it's pretty hard for these buzzy high-tech industries to avoid, hyperbole where they're talking about what they're going to achieve. And I think that's part of the issue, is that, we need carbon capture, but please don't pretend that this is going to solve problems that it won't.
Explain to me why. If we know where the large carbon emission sources are we doing enough to remove the carbon dioxide right at the source?
So some people are doing,
without changing the whole factory over?
Some people are doing that, but not very successfully. There's a couple. There's one in Norway that's somewhat successful in capturing carbon and storing it. But the problem is that all of the concentrated CO2 sources are things that need to go away. It's burning fossil fuels. It's mines like coal mines, or extracting oil or gas. That's where you see big streams of CO2 that you can just capture. So the easy stuff is stuff that in 10, 20 years, we just need to be not doing that. So that's not, to me, that's not really the future. I mean, there will still be some fossil fuels, even in a zero emissions world. We'll want to make some things out of fossil fuels, like plastics and maybe some other stuff. But in general, where the technology,
airplane fuel,
the technological advancement needs to happen is for things that are still going to exist in 20 years' time, because that's kind of what you're aiming for. So if you spend all your effort on the easy carbon capture, which we have categorically just failed to do effectively with 20, 30 years of effort and a lot of money spent on it, that stuff, that really does just feel like a fig leaf for the fossil fuel industry to pretend like they have, like there's some place in the future for what they're currently doing, the same things that they're doing now. So that's why these big projects that are about, it's not about the amount of CO2 that they're going to grab out of the atmosphere as part of this program. It's about giving several companies, several technologies, a reason to keep smart people, getting paid a salary for a couple of decades while they figure out all the problems. that's what this. Well, that's what makes sense to me, and that's the right way to think of it. But you just never see it promoted in that way.
Yeah.
Because it's not.
No,
not
you don't. you totally don't.
It's kind of, Alan,
They never put the two equations together.
like you were saying, where you would put the plant, right? The one that's going right now in Iceland by Climeworks is in Iceland. When I think of major super polluters or emitters of CO2, I don't think of Reykjavik. I don't think of Iceland, but it's 4,000 tons of CO2 per year, right? So it's a minimal amount, but it's where, exactly like you say, Rosemary, it's where the engineers are working on it. Like, because I would think if you're going to put a hub in the U.S., you'd put one outside of New York, one outside of L.A., maybe one outside of Houston, one outside of Chicago, because it's easier to collect CO2 from like car emissions and all those kind of things that are emitted there.
Yeah, I'm not sure how
Absolutely.
much the atmospheric CO2 actually varies within the
maybe
atmosphere.
maybe it just goes dispersed.
That's what I'm
I don't
saying.
think it varies much.
like we don't know.
No.
Do we
know?
know?
I mean, people know. We just don't know. The three of us don't know. Climate scientists know. I mean, they're measuring it all the time, and we could easily look that up, and maybe I will before the next time we talk about it. But I think...
Well, we should.
Yeah, like for these early stage projects, I would put them where the engineers are, because then that makes it very easy to go and, have a look and monitor. For larger scale demonstration projects, I would put them where you've got a clean energy source that couldn't be used for something else potentially. So I think that's why Iceland, because they've got as much geothermal as they want, basically. You could put it somewhere next to, some hydro that wasn't fully utilized, or, something like that. And then secondly, you need something to do with the CO2. So probably that's the harder part, is finding, a good reservoir to shove it. So that might be in a depleted oil or gas field or something like that.
And that's where this carbon engineering and oxy low carbon ventures with 1.5 is perfect out in the Permian Basin, right? If they're going to build a prototype to capture 1 million tons of CO2, like, where is there a better place to inject it into the ground? But I think at the same time, like in the U.S., I know there's a massive problem of leaking wells. So if you're looking at controlling some greenhouse gases, out in the Permian, the methane is 30 times worse as a greenhouse gas for the environment than CO2 is. Maybe they should stick some money into plugging those wells instead of snagging CO2 out of the air.
No, you're 100% right. And there's 1,000 different projects that you would do. If your goal was to actually, reduce atmospheric CO2, this is one of the last places that you would spend your money. But it's so that's why, I mean, if you assume that smart people, have thought about this for more than a few minutes, which I do assume that they have, their goal has to be the technology development, because it's so incredibly expensive compared to, there's a million things that you could do that would be, have a lower cost of abatement than this one.
So Rosemary, then why don't you have your top 10 list of carbon dioxide reducing items? Like, what are those top 10 things you would go after? Why don't I see that list when I Google it? I don't see a list. You think that there would be a list, right? Ocean Cleanup has a list. They'll give you the top 1,000 places where plastic is coming out of. Why do we not have a list on the top 10 CO2 producing places and how we want to reduce them?
Yeah, I mean, I could make my list, and I'm pretty sure that some other people have made lists. Maybe it's not talked about a lot, but I mean, just cleaning up electricity grid is by far that's wrong. The cheapest cost of abatement is energy efficiency, and that's what no one ever wants to talk about. But you can it doesn't even cost you money; it saves you money to do it, and so it's got like a negative cost of abatement. And then after that, electricity is the reason why I've focused the last nearly 20 years of my career on that, because that's by far the easiest way, and it also frees up decarbonizing a lot of other stuff that uses that electricity. So, that's where we start. And then there is there's a chart. Maybe I'll find it for the next time we talk. I think it's McKinsey, one of those big consulting firms. It's a few years old now, but they did do, have you seen it? It's got like little it's a bar chart with all of the different things that you can decarbonize in order of the width of the bar is like how much carbon we could eliminate.
Right.
and then they order them
Right.
from least expensive to most expensive. And so it is there are charts out there that will describe what's the cheapest way to go.
Why hasn't the U.S. government or European governments been knocking on that list? It seems to me like we're around this quite a bit. That'd be something I ought to be hearing at least once a month of, hey, these are the top 10 things we're going after, and this is why. And
I think Rosemary should present that at COP27.
It's not mine. It's
like,
not.
Come on, right?
It's not new. Everyone's seen this chart, haven't they? I'll have to share it.
Well, I've seen the chart.
Yeah,
they talk to the chart, but they don't talk. It's easy to talk to the chart. It's easy to talk to the chart about, okay, this is the big emitter. But then the hard part is the part you're talking about, trying to reduce the emissions there. How are you going to do it? Right. And so we get these projects like this $3.5 billion for carbon capture out of the air, which the administration will tout as being the way to fix the planet on some level. But you and I just discussed that it's not even in the top 10, maybe not even the top 100. So why is this being touted so highly when we need to be working on the top 10?
Yeah, it's because no one is project managing this energy transition. It's
bingo. That's it. That's exactly it.
Yeah,
you need somebody project managing it, and you don't.
I'll volunteer. I'll be the world's project manager for the energy transition.
Well, there's $3.5 billion. That seems like it's ready to pay you to do that.
Yeah, so but there's also,
let's get on it.
I mean, there's not many countries that have set aside, well, this is how much it's going to cost to solve the energy transition, so we're going to use our money in the best way. It's all, everybody's trying to work within different countries' current economies, and people are worried about jobs and existing industries and, developing new technology. Sure. It's new jobs. It's good for a country to develop that technology themselves, because then that's a future industry for them. And yeah, it also sounds like most of the things that you see disproportionate amount of money or attention on. So, hydrogen would be a good example. It's something that sounds like a pain-free solution to the to the climate crisis. So, yeah, hydrogen can do everything. So it sounds like, okay, great. All we need to do is just make hydrogen cheaper. So we'll work on that. And, direct air capture, it's like, it doesn't really matter what we do to the environment because we'll just suck it out again. So it sounds really appealing in that way. Whereas energy efficiency, for whatever reason, just doesn't sound exciting to people. It's like, it's a harder sell to tell people to stop doing things than to pay some smart people to develop new technologies, So, yeah, I guess politics is a reason. Everyone in the world isn't an engineer.
Yeah, I've got to say,
some people are politicians.
In the U.S., we've got to be the highest energy consumption per capita in the world. So we're probably the worst at energy efficiency. And I say us as a whole.
No, you definitely are.
Sure.
Not. It's not like it's not close. I don't think. There might be some Middle Eastern countries that do a little bit worse, but out of the big countries, definitely the US is the worst, and Australia is shockingly high on a per capita basis as well. I think Europeans use less than half of what someone living in the US does on
That's
average.
True.
So, yeah, definitely. But yeah, I mean, I've never understood why energy efficiency is not more popular, because it saves you money, but people just don't want to do it.
Like an engineering with Rosie episode.
Yeah, but it's just
in the works.
I think part of the problem, I've been trying, I just can't think of an interesting angle for it. It's not inherently interesting and sexy like a new technology is. Yeah, like I could make a dozen videos on direct air capture, and all those videos would be really interesting to people, and they would watch them.
It'd explode.
And I would make a video on energy efficiency, and no one would watch it. And so I mean, people, please write, if you're watching it somewhere where you can comment, or write in and tell us what's the angle for energy efficiency that I can use to make a video on it, because I think it's definitely the biggest thing that we should be doing more of that we're not. And
I've got a guest for you for that. I've got a guest for you for that episode. He's from northern Wisconsin. He's 69 years old, and his name is actually Art Saxon. He's my dad, and he will tell you, close that refrigerator, turn those lights off, don't turn the AC on, don't turn the heat up. He's your guy. He'll tell you.
Speaking of guests, we are going to take a quick commercial break. But when we come back, we're going to be talking with Michel Goulet, Market Development Manager for Wind Tower and Rope Access for Petzl. So he's going to give us all the great details of the safety gear that Petzl provides right after the break.
Ping Monitor is a continuous blade monitoring system which allows wind farm operators to stay ahead of maintenance. Wind techs can often hear damaged blades from the ground, but they can't continuously monitor all the turbines. They also can't calculate how bad the damage is or how fast it's propagating based on sound, but Ping can. Ping's acoustic system is being used on over 600 turbines worldwide. It allows operators to discover damage before it gets expensive and prioritize maintenance needs across their fleet, and it pays for itself the first time it identifies serious damage or saves you from doing an unnecessary visual inspection. Stop flying blind out there. Get Ping's ears on your turbines. Learn more at pingmonitor.co.
I have with us today Michel Goulet, who is the Market Development Manager for Wind Tower and Rope Access with Petzl America, based in Salt Lake City, Utah. Michel, welcome to the program.
Hi, Alan. How are you?
Great. Hey, we got a long list of things to talk about, and obviously Petzl is a safety group and has been manufacturing a wide variety of safety gear, and obviously in wind, as wind turbines get taller and as we move offshore, safety becomes even more important because every step you take is just a little bit higher, and it makes sense for all the operators, technicians to make sure they have the proper gear on if they're going to be doing work at height. One of the big questions that we get a lot of times is what's the appropriate safety gear, and what happens if a technician were to get hurt at height? Is there safety gear that should be taken along up the tower, up into the nacelle, to bring down an injured comrade? Is there products that Petzl designed specifically for that situation?
There is, right. So Petzl is really in the business of providing fall protection, access equipment, and rescue equipment for many industries, including the wind energy sector. If you're staying within the nacelle or in the column, generally speaking, fall protection equipment is one of the only things you need, but no fall protection system is complete without a rescue method or rescue kit that would allow you to intervene quickly in the event of somebody fainting as they're climbing into the wind turbine, or somebody falling there and becoming incapacitated. These wind turbines are usually located in isolated areas, and of course now offshore. Rescue may not be within a few minutes time frame, so you have to be prepared. If you're wearing fall protection equipment, your partner, hopefully you're not alone, you're always working with someone, and both of you are well versed in knowing how to deploy and access a casualty, stabilize them, and lower them down to a safe level. And of course Petzl has equipment that will accomplish that.
So are there specific things that you should be looking for if I'm a technician in terms of gear to bring people back down? Are there particular things to look out for in that gear?
Yeah, generally speaking, if you're climbing on a ladderway, you'll be connected to a cable grab or a rail grab on the ladderway, or you'll be climbing with lanyards, and if you're incapacitated, you'll be hanging from those things. So the first function of your rescue kit is to be able to transfer the casualty from whatever they're hanging on onto the rescue system that will lower you to a safe level. So a rescue kit, when it comes for rescuing a partner in fall protection, is always about being able to lift the casualty a little bit and connect them to the lowering line, and then disconnect them from whatever held them up there, a cable grab or a lanyard, and then you have a descent control device that will allow you to slowly but surely lower that person to a safe level where they can be evacuated from. Yeah, so that gets always more complex if you're outside of the wind turbine doing work cleaning or working on blades and stuff. The people who do that, generally speaking, have a lot more training in rope access. They're certified under SPRAD or IRADA, and they have a bunch of tricks to be able to get their partner down in a timely manner.
Yeah, it's complicated.
It is. It can be. So we engineer a kit together so that it's as simple as possible. Because in an emergency situation, spirits are high. Somebody may be injured and screaming, and there's a lot of. If you're not trained as a professional rescuer, you're not used to dealing with those kinds of emergency situations. So whatever a manufacturer can facilitate for you, it'll be appreciated. So as long as you can get above the casualty and anchor the little pulley system as well as the descent control device above that casualty, you should be able to raise them and then start lowering them very, very quickly in a matter of minutes. Of course, if this happens in the latter way, you'll have to have a way to get around the casualty and get above them. So Y lanyards, two-legged lanyards, will allow you to climb around and over the casualty to get up in a better position to accomplish that rescue lowering procedure.
So it's really actually difficult to keep up on all the new safety gear that appears every year. And I know as technicians are out there working on turbines at the moment, it's hard to keep track of all the new technology advancements, all the improved safety features that are out there. What are some of the newer components that are on the market?
Well, it's interesting that you're asking about that, because ANSI has just changed their descent control device standard. It is now rated, the ratings on descent control devices is now Z359.9. It used to be in the 0.4 standard, but that's all going to be hoisting devices, lifting devices. Now the Z359.9 is all on descent control, and there are 6 different types of descent control devices. So one of them that has made an appearance and is doing great in the wind industry is the type that you just connect to yourself and you just jump. And that would be, and that would lower you at a gradual speed to the ground, or hopefully to the platform before you hit the water in a wind turbine. But of course, you have other emergencies that can happen on wind turbines, and one of them would be that the nacelle, the controls there, everything catches fire, electrical fire, that sort of thing. So you have to evacuate the wind turbine, and sometimes the only way out would be from the nacelle hatchway, because the nacelle column could be full of smoke and you couldn't breathe, depending on where the problem is and stuff. So you have to be ready when you're working in wind turbines to be able to evacuate quickly. And so there's this type 1, which is clip and jump. There's a type 2, but they haven't qualified what that is yet, because the international standard, ISO standard, has a type 2, and it wouldn't fit within this standard too much. So right now there's only a type 1, type 3, type 4, and type 5. We sell a descent control device called the ID. And the ID stands for industrial descender, and it has a handle on it. And if you pull the handle, you go. If you release the handle, you stop. It has the additional safety benefit that if you pull the handle too far, you'll go into an anti-panic mode and you'll also stop. So the idea there with this device is to try and make it as safe as possible, so that you have to find the middle ground to descend. If you let go, you stop. If you pull too far, you stop. Type 4 would be one that you just pull to go, release to stop. The rig, the Petzl rig, works like that. And in type 5 is just like a brake bar rack that creates friction on the device, that you can modify the friction depending on the amount of bars you add, and just a descent control device like a figure 8 or something like that. But both of those devices have had their heyday. They're sometimes used in very long descents, like the brake bar rack might still be a great tool for that. But these other devices have made things safer, because you could get hit from something above and let go of everything. You're not going to go anywhere with those other devices that I mentioned, the type 2 and the type type 2, type 3 and type 4.
I know one of the things that everybody's worried about when they're working on ropes, particularly on blades, is there's just a lot of sharp edges, and even in working on the cells, there's so many sharp edges. So you're worried about your ropes getting damaged, and you worry about your gear, which is expensive, right? You want to protect that gear as much as you can. What are some of the new features about sort of protecting the ropes from all those friction edges and those rough fiberglass edges?
Sure, there was some well documented fatalities in the oil industry recently where roll failures occurred, and these were on oil platforms, and the people fell into the sea. And so obviously, Spratt and Errata have paid a lot of attention to this and make sure that you're using the correct methods to protect your rope over edges and stuff like that. So Petzl has launched this year a couple of new products. We have the Protect and the Protect Plus. The Protect is a PVC type of material that velcros together over your rope. Has a little rope clip to clip to your rope so it doesn't move up and down. And when you have a stationary rope, that's a really good product to use if you're going over a sharp edge. If you're going over even a sharper edge or maybe a hot pipe or something like that, we have the Protect Plus, which is made out of Technora and Kevlar type fiber, and that gives you twice the heat resistance and cut resistance as a normal rope pad would. We also launched the roller coaster, and that's usually kind of two rollers on a frame that you put on a 90-degree edge. You place that, you tie it down on that edge, or you can bolt it on there. And obviously those rollers move as the rope moves. So if you're lowering somebody or raising them, you're always better, especially on the raises. You're always better to use a device where the rope will touch only ball bearing sheaves, so that you're not going to increase the weight of the casualty or the worker by more than 5 or 10%, right? So that's good. If you didn't have that, you double the weight of the worker. So you need to use the right gear in the right spot for that, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the my co-host Rosemary Barnes, who can be with us today, she's a big Petzl fan, and she's always about safety, right? So she's about climbing safety, and as we bring more and more equipment up on the turbines, particularly on blade repairs, you see all kinds of grinders and cutters and ultrasound equipment and all these devices, which are not light, but you can't obviously drop them because that's the safety hazard. So what are some of the equipment bags and some of the techniques to make sure that all the gear that you bring up with stays up with you?
Right. So Spratt says any tool that's heavier than 10 pounds has to have its own belay system. It has to be it shouldn't be connected to your harness or anything. If you have smaller tools that weigh less than 10 pounds, we're launching shortly some new equipment bags, tool bags that have the ability to connect a bunch of tethers on them. So all tools, all equipment needs to be tethered, of course, when you're working at height. There's, I guess, what manufacturers try to do is make it as convenient as possible to connect and disconnect these things so that it's easy for the worker. It's not simple to design something that, if you're going to use a big wrench, well, how do you keep that always connected and not interfere with the work at the same time? So you need to use swivels and make sure that the rope doesn't get the tether rope doesn't get too tangled up in things. So there's all little ingenious ways to try and accommodate that, keep the worker efficient in their work, but make sure that everything is tethered. We recently had people here at our training facility that work in the telecom industry. Every time something was about to come off the harness, they always would tether it first. So it's just a habit to get into, and it's a good habit.
Wow. Yeah, that is a good habit. Rosemary is also a fan of your helmet. She has one of your safety helmets, and it seems like helmets are sort of a fashion piece, but also a safety piece. And there's different varieties of helmets that you see the technician uses. You want to sort of talk to what the different helmet varieties are and which helmet you should use for which application?
Sure. OSHA mandates the use of ANSI certified helmets on work sites like in the wind industry. ANSI has their standard Z89.1, which covers all the necessary equipment performance requirements of good head protection, what it should have. And there's penetration tests, there's flame tests so that it doesn't the helmet doesn't catch on fire. There's electrical conductivity test as well that is done, and especially in the wind industry, it's highly advisable to get an E-rated helmet, a Type 1 E-rated helmet, so that there's protection against electrical hazards and things like that. So unfortunately, you can't have any ventilation holes in your helmet. But it's the better of two evils, I guess. So a good helmet too, when you're working at height, chin strap, very important. Not just the 2-point, but a 4-point chin strap. If you're falling, the helmets, your head can hit something and the helmet can pop off, even with a 2-point, just a chin strap. Best to have a good work at height helmet with a 4-point chin strap, so that even if the helmet gets in contact with something when you're falling, it will probably stay on your head. The only time you don't want it to stay on your head is that you could, in a confined space, be suspended by your helmet. So our helmets are engineered to release at about 100 pounds of force. The buckle will separate, and that's a safety feature so that you won't strangle yourself with the helmet. So a lot of things to think about with a helmet, but obviously comfort is very important, because you want to make sure you're wearing something not too heavy as well. There's a lot of talk about Type 2 helmets and their need, and they tend to have protection on the sides and top impact, and they tend to be a little heavier for working at height. So people might think they want a Type 2 helmet, but they really want a Type 1 for the protection on the top of the head. And having some space between the helmet and your head is also good too, because you could have something sharp penetrate through the helmet, and there's only an allowable penetration distance there. If you want to meet that standard. Of course, you have the face shield as well, very important. We have a very good face shield. We have two of them. We have a half face and a full face. The half face is more for eye protection, that sort of thing. The full face is if you're going into a breaker panel, or an electrical panel of any kind, where there can be an arc flash or something, and you want that full face protected from any contact with melted metals and stuff. So that's the vizin. So that's the full face. The vizier is the half face. They both flip up and get out of the way if you don't need them, and they're of course both certified under the Z87.1, which is also an ANSI standard for protective face and eye protection.
Yeah, there's a lot to think about when choosing a helmet. It's just don't pick one randomly, right? You need to pick it for the application we're going to be using it, and add the safety pieces that you're going to need when you're actually doing the work.
That's a good point, Alan. You have to think about it as a head protection system. It's not only getting hit from above, but you'll sometimes need hearing protection that has to fit on the helmet and has to be able to lift back and be out of the way if you don't use them. If you're not using a grinder or something that will help protect, and you have to have an easy way to flip a shield down for eye protection. You may also have attachment points. We do on ours. We make a lot of headlamps, of course, and using headlamps in a nacelle, it can be very important, or if you're working inside blades and stuff. So having a good way to mount a headlamp on there with a lot of lumens. We have headlamps now that go from 500 to 900 lumens. You can light up the whole nacelle if you wanted to with some of these smaller headlamps. And one thing that we've been able to do with headlamps is Normally they work on the 3 AAA batteries, but we've replaced those with a flat rechargeable battery. So it'd be a lithium battery. And you can recharge that many, many times for the value of about 900 AAA batteries. So at first they seem a little expensive at $40, somewhere around there. But when you think of all the rechargeable conditions that you might have, you're going to save some money and you're going to help the environment as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the headlamps are totally the cool thing to have, right? I mean, if you have a good headlamp, everybody wants to steal your helmet, and which is normal, I suppose. So one of the key pieces for technicians and engineers is to make sure that their PPE is actually working and that it is functional before they go out to a site. You typically want to check your equipment. What are some of the recommended Petzl inspections for harnesses and ropes and helmets and some of the metallic carabiners and those kind of things? What are some of the checkpoints there?
We recommend a quick, daily inspection every time you're about to use a harness or a helmet or anything. You should have a look at it and just make sure all the straps are okay. None of the fasteners are damaged or things like that. There's always a quick little inspection that occurs. Depending on the company you work for and what your internal policy is and how often you use the gear, you may have a formal inspection every 3 or 4 months. OSHA recommends once a year, a very formal evaluation where you write down whatever you see on each piece of product. You'll either fail the product, pass the product, or indicate that the product needs a little monitoring throughout the year. So those are the 3. So all of this, every piece of gear that we sell an inspection sheet with it. To try and make things a little easier for anybody. So it's only a 1-page, it's kind of a check mark thing. The first thing you want to check on a helmet is the date of manufacture, because helmets and any type of textile material that we sell, harnesses, slings, any component that has textiles in them, as well as our helmets, has a 10-year shelf life. That's what Petzl recommends. So even if it's sat on a shelf for 10 years, after 10 years, you shouldn't use that product. There's a natural deterioration of nylon sometimes and helmets and things like that. So 10 years is the maximum life. If you're doing your inspection and you see, you're within your 10-year period, then you go through a series of check marks, things that you need to check on both comfort elements, but mainly safety elements, that no little cracks on the side of the helmet or no stickers on the helmet and things like that. So that, and same thing for harnesses, right? You want to check the crucial load-bearing stitching to make sure there's no broken stitching in there. You want to make sure that the functionality of the connectors, the strap connectors, the adjustability of not everything is rusted out and stuff. Of course, going out to sea, you're going to have a lot more corrosion, right, at sea. So the hardware we have an indefinite life on, like a carabiner. As long as you inspect it once a year and it functions properly, and the gate, when you release it, it closes automatically if that's the type of gate you're purchasing, or if you have a screw gate, you don't have any problem screwing it up and down. And of course, when you release the gate, that it closes and there's no corrosion in there. That's great. But out to sea, sometimes there's corrosion that gets in the hinge area of carabiners. So you release the gate and it doesn't close and lock automatically, right? So obviously those are some of the things you need to check, because a carabiner that you're using that's got an open gate in it loses about 60-70% of its strength. So you don't want non-functioning connectors or anything like that in your equipment cache. You want to make sure that you inspect those on a regular basis, and at least once a year, unless the company you're working for feels that, hey, you guys are working hard, you're out there every day. Maybe it would require a full-on inspection every 3 months or every 4 months, depending on your company policy.
And if a piece of equipment ages out, like a helmet ages out, or a harness has some webbing that's been damaged to the point where you can't use it anymore, what is the procedure to get rid of it? You just toss it in the trash, or should it just be totally destroyed, like run over it, or whatever you're going to do?
Right. Well, harnesses have to be cut up so they never get used again, and really cut up, because we saw once somebody had found some of our harnesses in a bin and had sewn them back together, believe it or not. So I hope so we were able to solve that issue. But destroying, make a those helmets make great flower pots. You just drill holes through them and you hang them up, and they look pretty cool actually as flower pots. So, but make sure that they're non reusable, right? Because sometimes you'll isolate something and then somebody will inspect it, and it failed, and somehow it gets back into the circulation. So you really have to make sure you have a good equipment management system. We have a great 3-day class here for that we provide a manufacturer training on equipment. Equipment and PPE inspection and equipment management class for end users, and we also have a train the trainer one too. So Petzl has a great program for equipment inspection. Obviously, it's within everybody's interest to make sure that equipment that's not suited for use should be discarded properly.
Absolutely. And we're going to wrap up here, but I think this is really good to get this information out, because there's going to be a lot of activity this spring, summer, and fall in wind. And I know as we know, there's a lot more wind turbines being put up this summer, and it just makes a lot of sense. Everybody check your safety gear, make sure it's working properly. Go to the Petzl site if you have any questions, and download the data sheet, check your equipment. And hey, if it's bad, get rid of it, destroy it, get rid of it. And if you have any questions, Michel, do they just reach out to Petzl directly? Go to the website? What should they do?
We have a number of really good product information on their websites. There are tech tips on how to use it properly, how not to use it. There's technical notices that are sold with every product that are all downloadable and stuff. So our website is a wealth of information. No problem. Also, we have, if somebody wants to talk to a human being, that's fine too. We have technical sales reps across both the US and Canada, around the world, of course, but here at Petzl America, we handle both Canada and the US, and we have about 30 reps that are in every region, and it's easy to get that contact information for those folks, so you have somebody local to talk to. But we also have a technical information manager here at Petzl that can take both your questions by written or in a phone call, and we'll be glad to clear up any issues.
Well, great. That's fantastic. That's good to know. Michel, thank you for being on the program. And it's going to be a great summer. So we hope to have you back sometime soon to talk about some of the new safety gear in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. And we hope to keep all the wind turbine technicians safe throughout the next 6 months to the next 60 years.
Lightning is an act of God, but lightning damage is not. Actually, it's very predictable and very preventable. Strike Tape is a lightning protection system upgrade for wind turbines made by WeatherGuard. It dramatically improves the effectiveness of the factory LPS, so you can stop worrying about lightning damage. Visit weatherguardwind.com to learn more, read a case study, and schedule a call today.
A lot of great information there, guys. So if you missed it, rewind, re-listen to Michel Goulet, because he has a lot of great safety information and a lot of new safety technology, actually, that we're going to see being used in industry. So interesting interview. Thanks, Michel, for being on the podcast. To wrap up this episode, just a couple of things here. We were down at ACP in San Antonio. The Department of Energy held the Collegiate Wind Competition. So there were 12 competing colleges down there, and Rosemary and I walked down to that event and saw some part of it, actually. They had, Rosemary, how many wind turbines? Not wind turbines. They had a lot of wind turbines. They had wind tunnels. They had 3 wind tunnels, one large one and 2 sort of medium-sized wind tunnels.
Yeah, and then the kids one as well, which was just some.
Oh yeah, that's true. Right.
Four
homemade thing.
Fans,
yeah.
And a wave tank in front of it. That was the cool thing, that they added a floating category, or a floating aspect to the competition this year. And they've got the fans there, and so this was for the younger kids, I think up to high school, and they have these 4 big big fans, and they make a wind turbine and it makes electricity. I think the older kids are making their own generators, winding them.
And they're winding generators. That was cool.
And the younger kids are using one that the competition provides. And then they also have to have a floating version where they put it in a wave tank, and they generate some little waves and make sure that it can operate and stay afloat in those wavy conditions. So I thought that was super
cool. It looked like there were roughly 3 divisions there. So there was like the elementary school, middle school, then clearly high school age kids, and then on the collegiate level. And the collegiate teams were pretty well sized. They probably had 8-ish people on each of the teams running the wind turbines through. And from what we could tell, they're doing a variety of wind speed across the turbines, measuring the energy output. So it was a real sort of collegiate level competition. I wouldn't. Yeah, it was similar to probably Rosemary's competed in the SAE Formula car development process.
Yeah, and
I did.
Aero design competition was the one I did the most.
And the aero design competition.
Every year for that. Mojave Desert.
I was in a solar car competition years ago, which GM sponsored. We made a solar car and rode it across the United States. Yeah, so those competitions are really good to develop engineers. That's a sure thing.
Yeah.
And I was excited to see the number of
I met with one of the teams actually that was working in the breakfast area of my hotel while I was there. And it was really cool to speak with them actually and kind of just grab their backgrounds. Like one guy was an electrical engineer, another person on the team was a mechanical engineer, they had a software guy. And what I was really liking about the idea was, so we'll go back up a second. In the US, we don't have a whole lot of post-secondary education focused on wind energy, right? Company I work for is a Danish company. You have DTU, you have University of Aarhus, you have a lot of, in the European side, and Bristol and things, you have a lot of post-secondary education focused directly on wind. And I know there's a few programs in the US that are coming along, but seeing that they were grabbing, I said, what's your background in wind? What do you like about wind? And the guy was like, oh, I'm an electrical engineer. And they just grabbed me to be a part of this team because I'm pretty good at, at my craft. I said, so what do you think about wind energy now? He's like, I love it. Like, it's really cool to be a part of something. They were from Texas Tech, right? So they're in the heart of wind country. So they were focusing on it. And it was really cool. They had one thing about their design that I really liked they were smart engineers for the program they were doing. They had CNC'd aluminum blades on theirs. So they said, when they crank up the speed in that wind tunnel, our blades aren't going to break. And so I asked them, is that scalable to the industry? Right. And they just kind of looked at me. And I was like, I don't think so, guys. But I mean, that wasn't part of the thing. They were fantastic engineers, a bunch of smart young minds coming up into the wind industry. So it was exciting to see it. I liked it. The ACP included that in the program.
It was good. There were 12 teams plus another 4 that were at the collegiate level. I just want to read off their names because a lot of them actually listen to the podcast, as it turns out. Brigham Young University, Cal State University, Maritime Academy, James Madison University, Texas Tech, like you mentioned, Joel, Pennsylvania State, so Penn State, Virginia Tech, University of Colorado Boulder, very beautiful place, Johns Hopkins outside Baltimore, Kansas State, which was the eventual winner, Northern Arizona University, University of Wisconsin-Madison, and Washington State University Everett. And then there were 4 what they call learn-along teams, so they're just getting their start in this competition. California Polytechnic State University, Massachusetts Maritime Academy, which is close to us out here, University of Texas at Dallas, and then Universidad Ana G. Mendez. So that's a pretty good group right there. And hopefully, GE or somebody, Vestas, offers these young students jobs when they come out of college because they have that experience. That's what this is all about, right? So congratulations to Kansas State for winning first overall. First place, Northern Arizona came in second overall, and James Madison University came in third overall. Congratulations to everybody. So the next competition is in New Orleans. And to enroll in that, if your college is interested, you need to reach out to the DOE. Just go on the DOE website, and you can find out how to enroll for that competition. So that's going to do it for the Uptime podcast this week. Check Rosie's engineering channel out, Engineering with Rosie on YouTube. You can follow us on Apple iTunes, Apple Podcast, and we're also on YouTube, so you can find us on multiple platforms. A lot of people like Spotify. Where we're in San Antonio, people mentioned to me that they listen to us on Spotify, and I thought that was nice. So check us out on your listening platforms, and listen to us next week on the UPTIME podcast.